Welcome to today's webinar, Illumina Drives Innovation through Supplier Quality Automation. This webinar is brought to you by ETQ. ETQ, part of Hexagon, is the leading provider of quality, EHS, and compliance management software, trusted by the world's strongest brands. More than 600 customers globally, spanning industries such as pharmaceuticals, electronics, heavy industry, food and beverage, and medical devices, benefit from ETQ to secure positive brand reputations, enable higher levels of customer loyalty, and enhance profitability. ETQ Reliance offers built-in best practices and powerful flexibility to drive business excellence through quality. Only ETQ lets customers configure industry-proven quality processes to their unique needs and business vision. ETQ was founded in 1992 and has main offices in the US and Europe. We're expecting the session to last about 45 minutes, followed by a question and answer session. At this time, all participants are in listen-only mode. Please feel free to prepare questions for our presenters. We encourage you to ask questions at any time during the presentation. The questions will be addressed at the end. To ask a question, click on the Q&A button on the bottom of your window. Type your question and click Submit. Questions will not be viewable to other attendees. It's my pleasure now to introduce our speakers for today. Tom Barlow, Strategic Solutions Engineer with ETQ, has over 25 years of experience working in quality. He began his career as a quality systems manager, where he documented and implemented all aspects of a QMS that ultimately achieved ISO 9001 registration. Having caught the quality bug, Tom then consulted with numerous companies to help streamline their quality management systems, ultimately achieving compliance. Tom was drawn to ETQ when he discovered the power of ETQ Reliance. With its unparalleled configuration capability, he realized that ETQ Reliance was the perfect tool to automate any organization's compliance management system. Since joining ETQ in 2003, Tom has served in various sales and solutions engineering roles and has been instrumental in contributing to the organization's growth. Mike Farrell is IT manager with Illumina. He has a focus on quality management with the biotech company and has been involved in developing, designing, and testing quality solutions to meet Illumina's growing business requirements. Mike has collaborated with stakeholders across the organization to develop best-in-class solutions and is directly involved in creating Illumina's supplier portal to track and manage suppliers in audits, corrective actions, and other critical quality processes. Tom, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Gina. And we're pleased to be joined here by Mike from Illumina, who will share some information about his experience with implementing our system and some of the benefits associated with using our system in a supplier environment. Just a quick agenda for today. I'm going to do a little bit of an intro into ETQ, discuss the state of supplier quality today as we've learned from a lot of our customers, and then I'll switch over to Mike to talk about the quality journey that he's had with Illumina and ETQ Reliance, and then we'll open it up. I'll ask him a few questions that he'll then share with us his responses, and then we'll open it up for general Q&A. So it's a pretty simple agenda. We are looking forward to our discussion today. Mike, are you ready to go?
Certainly. Thanks, Tom.
Okay. So first, we'll do a little bit of an intro into ETQ, and Gina did a nice job of setting the stage for this introduction already. ETQ has been in business since 1992. We were formed originally by two lead auditors from Underwriters Laboratories to create a consulting company to help companies implement their quality management systems. Being very responsive to customers since the very beginning, we realized that our customers were looking for tools to help automate those quality management systems. At the time, the only things that were out there were very expensive content management systems that required a tremendous degree of customization. So they created a software tool in 1995, which was our first version, that had two main tenets in mind. One, pre-configured systems that customers could use immediately without any customization, and also understanding that no two businesses are alike and that changes may need to be made between different implementations, we made the system configurable so that non-technical administrators that work on the business side of the organization who understand the business needs, that would be able to configure the system without programming. So we now have, you can see from this slide, we have different locations. Our headquarters is in Boston. We have over 1 million active users across about 700 clients in different industries. And just about a year ago, we were acquired by Hexagon, which is a metrology and plant management, basically quality control software organization that has a lot of tools out there, quite a few actually, several divisions and business units, quite a large concern. And they saw our tool as an opportunity to pull it all together. Our tool being a hosted system that allows you to automate business processes, would allow us to take their quality control data. Once an issue is identified, it could then launch into our system as a non-conformance, and then the quality management system processes could kick in. And we'd love to have a more detailed discussion about some of this in the future, but that's just a very high level about our relationship with Hexagon. And the synergy of us is really working together is very powerful. ETQ Reliance itself is a workflow-based business process automation platform. We pre-configure 42 applications that are ready to use. When I say pre-configure, we actually use our own configuration tool to build our out-of-the-box applications that can then be configured by you and your non-technical administrators to meet your own specific business process requirements. This all comes on one agile platform that's easy to use and easy to access, that's available in the cloud. So there's no IT footprint per se. Our system is all managed in the cloud. All the security and maintenance is done by us. However, we can still integrate with any external systems that you might have in place. I mentioned our customer base of over 700. One thing that's unique about the configurability of ETQ Reliance is the nature of the different types of clients that we can work with. So these are just 8 main categories of clients that we work with. Because it's configurable, you don't have to have custom versions for each business unit, but rather the generic out-of-the-box configuration can be used by most, and then where necessary, configurations can be done to accommodate their individual requirements. Since we're speaking with Illumina today, and Mike is with us, and they're in the life sciences space, we do have about 30 to 35% of our customer base is in the life sciences space, and this is a representation of some of the clients that we work with. So let's discuss for a couple minutes supplier quality today. Today, we find that a typical manufacturing organization spends 40 to 80% of their purchasing dollars on raw materials. That's a huge amount. And you want to make sure that the raw materials that your suppliers are sending to you meet your requirements and are minimizing the risk of you and your organization having issues. We find 7 reasons why supply chain management is critical now. And I already mentioned the concept of risk. So you want to make sure that you minimize risk to your organization. You're going to put processes in place to minimize the potential that you're going to allow potentially non-conforming suppliers' products to come into your quality management system. You want to optimize performance for both the customers and suppliers. Once again, you want to reduce cost. So not just the initial purchase price, but the total cost of ownership. The idea is that you want to make sure that you're minimizing your exposure and minimizing the cost, ultimately the cost of poor quality from your own quality management system that may be caused by poor supplier quality. You also want to create loyal relationships. As you can imagine, some suppliers are more critical than others. Some suppliers have, in some cases, you may have single source suppliers for certain types of things. So it really benefits both concerns, both you and your supplier, to have a more powerful relationship through the supplier management that can be achieved through our system. Improving both the quality of both your own product as well as their product benefits everyone in the long run. It also allows you to increase administration efficiencies. Using our tool, you can actually collaborate with external suppliers, which allows you to assign things to suppliers. The system tracks things automatically. As reminders come up, it can start to remind your supplier that something has to be done. It gives you clear visibility into what's currently in the supplier's hands. It literally reduces the cost of managing this administratively because the system handles a lot of that for you. Also, with our system and its workflow, you can define onboarding processes that have to take place when you establish a potentially new supplier. What is the process for onboarding that supplier? Do you have a process to make sure that you ask them certain questions? And if you do, you can send them those questionnaires directly using external collaboration. They can provide their responses right within the system. You can do audits right in our system against those suppliers as part of the initial onboarding You can monitor information on an ongoing basis as you have that relationship with the supplier. So the whole idea is to increase efficiency, minimize risk, and ultimately protect your brand, because the quality of your product and the output is something that is visible to any of the customers that you work with. So we've seen that, of course, today's environment and quality is very complex, and it's getting increasingly so. So we have things like inconsistent processes, which reduces productivity, siloed or outdated systems forcing duplication of work. This is a huge thing that we solve. Oftentimes, customers have different systems for the same thing across different facilities or different parts of the world. With our global platform that's highly configurable, you can reduce the number of existing systems as well, and then ultimately combine that into one global platform. Also, unresolved issues. Once somebody identifies an issue using a typical old school method, like putting it on a piece of paper and sending someone an email, for example, you lose visibility into that immediately. But because you have global visibility into any issues in our system, and you have workflow to make sure that those issues are dealt with in a timely manner, you will stop delaying the time for product to get to the market. In addition, weak supplier relationships would add additional risk. So I discussed just a few minutes ago that having a strong relationship with your supplier benefits everyone and reduces your risk ultimately in the long run. So today we're going to be discussing, of course, supply chain, but our system, our platform can handle everything, running the gamut from initial product design all the way through post-surveillance with the customer, issues that might be identified, et cetera. So as I mentioned, today we're going to be focusing on the supply chain side. One of the things about the platform and the fact that it's a single global platform that can be deployed across your organization is that it literally allows you, no matter what your global footprint is, to have one system to manage everything. It's a single source of the truth. It gives you easy reporting because everything's in the same place. It gives you global accountability and traceability across your entire process. So that being said, this single slide is going to give us a little bit of an introduction into how different applications and processes work on the platform together. So the first thing we have is this application called Suppliers, Materials, and Chemicals. It allows you to have a single list of all your suppliers and the products and services that they provide. Of course, we can integrate with your ERP system or systems. We have many customers that have multiple ERP systems. And one of the first challenges that they have is that they don't have a global list. They don't have a single source of the truth. Our system allows you to consolidate all that into one place so that regardless of who is dealing with a supplier anywhere in the world or receiving products from that supplier, you have one single place to manage and report on that information. Part of the onboarding could involve auditing. So we have an audits management application in our system that allows you to audit the supplier or do a surveillance audits on an ongoing basis as part of the qualification and ongoing maintenance. And then based on the type of industry that you're in, you may have to qualify each individual part or product that a supplier provides to you, the raw materials, that is. So we have an application called Production Part Approval Process, originally built around the automotive industry, but could literally be used for any type of a process, configured and simplified based on your own needs to have some sort of a qualification. Oftentimes, when your supplier provides you with product, you may want them to demonstrate their capability and that product's capability of meeting your requirements before you start ordering that product from that supplier. So this process allows for that to happen. Once again, reducing risk, saving a lot of people time and resources, because they're not just shipping you stuff that they're incapable of actually creating for your requirements. This process allows you to have them and force them to demonstrate their ability to comply with those requirements and get approval before you start doing business with that particular supplier. Once again, the collaboration using our systems workflow allows you to send things like PPAPs or product approval requirements to your supplier directly with our system. They would get assignments. They would have a homepage with those open assignments, and they can interact with the system and submit those things to you as attachments within the system itself, instead of sending separate emails, instead of having disparate information all over the place. Once you start conducting business with your supplier, you can then do incoming inspections, comparing the acceptance criteria against what's defined as being acceptable. If something fails, you can trigger a nonconformance report in our nonconformance reporting application. This has its own workflow for dispositioning the nonconformance and making a decision about what has to happen. From there, if the supplier was at fault, you could click a button and launch a SCAR, which then a supplier corrective action, which could then be assigned right to your supplier once again. So this not only talks about collaboration, but most importantly, what I like about this diagram is it puts everything into context. It's not just a set of separate individual processes that are working independently, but in a real life situation, there's a lot of equilibrium that occurs between these different processes. And our platform capability that we call connectivity allows you to manage that very easily within our system. Keep in mind, we're scaling this across the entire globe. So your organization around the world will all have access to that information if needed, and it's all connected for global reporting. In addition, there may be a need to do a temporary change to a standard process. We have an application called Plan Deviation. It's a workflow-based application that allows someone to request and approve a deviation that it might be in place, and then communicate it through our integration with our document control application. There's a document control application that's a workflow-based application for the creation, review, approval, and distribution of documents. So users are going into our system to find the most recently approved version of a document. No better place within the system to communicate there's the temporary change in place. So anyone that opens up a document that happens to have an active deviation, there's a hyperlink and a message in that document to that deviation. The nature of the deviation being temporary, it's all based on the status of this record. Once it gets approved and moves to a special step called active, and only once it's active is it available for any document as a message. Once the deviation expires and it moves past active to closed, the message disappears. So it's literally back to business as usual for any number of documents that are in the system around the world without actually having to ever touch those individual documents. In addition to the supplier corrective action, of course, we can do internal corrective actions. I'm just going to end this story pretty quickly because we want to get over to Mike, but all of this is transactional. You're capturing data automatically against suppliers on a day-to-day basis. On-time delivery, correct quantity, inspection results, number of scars, number of non-conformances. All that information is transactional. And there's an application on the platform called Supplier Rating that allows you to create what's called scoring and rating profiles based on the type of product or commodity to automatically rate not just your suppliers, but every single product and service that your supplier provides. So most supplier management programs just allow you to rate the supplier, but we can get down to the product and services level with that supplier because we have data on that, right? So now, based on that data, the supplier rating for each product might go up or down. As a result of that, this is really the benefit, is that there could be a feedback loop that then feeds back into what happens the next time you receive something from that supplier. And it's all based upon the risk. So in other words, if a certain product has a very high rating, maybe we don't have to do as much inspection or even skip a couple of inspections. We call it skip lot. So maybe we're confident that that product is going to meet our requirements because it has in the past. So therefore, we don't have to throw the same amount of resources at it that we did before. Or alternatively, if it's a low rating for that product, we know that it's going to be a higher risk, and therefore we can protect ourselves by stepping up on the inspection efforts and the sampling efforts that take place when that product comes in. Or maybe you did an implementation or integration with your ERP system. Someone goes to cut a purchase order from procurement against that particular product. It checks our system and says, this one's at risk because we have some open issues. So imagine the time and resources it could save by preventing you from even ordering something that could be potentially bad if you have an opportunity to order something that's better from a different supplier. So that's the introduction that I wanted to mention, and I appreciate being given the time to do that, just to provide a context. Now with Mike is going to describe his situation with Illumina.
Perfect. Thanks, Tom. Yeah, good morning, good afternoon to everybody. My name is Michael Farrell. I'm joining you guys from a company called Illumina. And so let's dive right into this, guys. See if I can, yeah, there we go, perfect. So just a little bit about me. Here's kind of a little bit of my background. Big takeaway from this is I've been on Reliance for quite some time. So when I started my career about 12, 13 years ago, got onto the platform and have been there ever since. And I can say that, confidently that everything that Tom is telling us is very true. It's a very, very powerful platform that we're able to configure heavily on in order to really dive in and get down to the exact requirement that ultimately our end customers need. And a lot of what Tom talked about today, we've actually implemented at Illumina, starting with our suppliers. And for today's conversation, that's where we'll focus. So what is Illumina? What do we do? What is our business here? So you can see our mission that I put up here on screen to improve human health by unlocking the power of the genome. So Illumina is in the business of sequencing genetics. We develop both the machines for which a genome would be sequenced on, as well as the consumables and other aspects of running those machines to provide our end users, whether that be in a research only setting or within the clinic in an IVD type setting, the ability to sequence. Now, one of the best ways for, I feel, to kind of relate what we do and how we do business is 23andMe. 23andMe uses all of our machines in order to sequence your DNA, in order to give you all of that fun information about where you come from, or Ancestry.com, same deal. So in essence, we are in the business of genetics. So with that, and being within a highly technical area of life science, our relationships, a lot of Tom, I think you hit on this as well. It's very critical for us to keep strong relationships with our suppliers. So a lot of the times, we do have single points of failure. We do have some specialized materials that ultimately we work really closely with our suppliers in order to define, if you will. And so that relationship is really important with us to ensure that we're continuing to see a consistent level of quality and being able to timely react when it comes to when we do see dips within that. So one of the first things that we started with on our journey with ETQ at Illumina was with our ERP system and integrating our suppliers to that SMC module, supplier materials, chemicals, that Tom was just telling you all about. What that is basically the system allows us to have API, very simple API. It's easy to integrate with the ERP, where we can bring in both our material information as well as our supplier information to have that basis, to have a quality base for who are quality contacts when it comes to interacting with these suppliers. So once we got that SMC module up and running, one of the first things that we did at Illumina was the creation of what we refer to as supplier change notifications. So because of a lot of our materials are custom and they come from strong relationships with those suppliers, anytime that there's a change to those materials, we want to have that come into the system as quickly as possible so that we're notified of that change. And what Reliance allowed us to do was not only set up those profiles for the suppliers, but give them that opportunity to push that information into us. That reduced a significant amount of problems that we'll talk about on the next screen, I'm sure you can imagine. But in essence, it was a huge win for us and really the starting point for our supplier collaboration journey. From there, we really expanded, and you can see I put a little schematic on how this kind of works for us down there, but specifically around SCARs, supplier audits, and supplier investigations. So over the last 3 years, we've really built out those 3 areas with our supplier quality engineers and supplier quality team in order for us to have a direct collaboration with the suppliers. So whenever we do have a supplier audit, the supplier is able to respond directly when it comes to not only the audit that took place, but as well as any non-conformances or follow-up action items that are required as a result of that audit. It's a huge win for us, as a lot of what's happening in email and kind of not visible. Same deal with SCAR. When it comes to the non-conformances that are generated through our ERP, when we want to directly collaborate with that supplier, we will leverage ETQ Reliance with the use of a very custom, or I should say, highly configured workflow. And so that was a huge win for us internally. And SCAR is something kind of near and dear to. The way that Reliance is able to allow myself as an administrator in IT to configure exactly that workflow that we're really looking for when it comes to Illumina was a huge win. We were able to really detail out the more granular process, if you will, that isn't always offered in some of the larger systems that we've seen in the past. And so by taking this into ETQ and being able to really get to what the teams needed has really in turn create a lot of benefits for us. And one of the last things that we're continuing to work on is around supplier investigations. So before we go into the whole SCAR process or, potentially out of a supplier audit for more low level type of findings, we want to be able to collaborate with that supplier. And so again, we leverage ETQ to be able to have that back and forth with the supplier to have the best understanding as to really what the root cause of an issue had been that is reported to us, depending on where the source of that issue was. And as well, what's not mentioned on this slide today is we do have additional plans to continue to building out this area. So it's a very flexible area for us, and we've gotten a lot of benefit out of it today, and we'll continue to develop around supplier quality and reliance. So let's talk about some of those benefits, because that's the fun stuff, right? So one of the biggest things is the real-time monitoring of in-process records. That was a huge one for us. SCARs, SCNs, particularly, it's very important for us to understand where we have stock, when potentially stock could run out based on a change in a material, how many SCARs we're potentially issuing, what are the turnaround times on those SCARs, and really the follow-ups, those escalations, those reminders for the supplier and for our internal teams. It cut out the need for Excel, for email, that going back and forth between individual teams internally as to who was really responsible. And the system gave us that single source location for that monitoring, and as well provided an audit trail. And obviously, being in quality, that is a very big thing. And I know in our past that was a bit of a struggle. And so by having a single platform and having everything within one location, not just for SCARs but also like supplier audits, all those aspects of supplier quality that build up into more or less a rating of that supplier, is all within one place where we can really see the audit trail. So one of the big benefits of Reliance, being that it is a workflow engine, is you truly get really, really good insights as to when and when things were due, how they were complete, and when they got complete. So the phase tracking and monitoring of those records is very strong, and something that we've leveraged significantly, that I have on this last bullet point here, around what we call our KSPM, or our key supplier performance metrics. Now, what we did with all of these fun forms that we developed is we actually built up some scorecards around these suppliers and what we refer to as that KSPM. And what that does is allows us to see, how did we score on subsequent audits? How many SCARs have we had against non-conformances that we've realized? And really, are we going to continue working with these suppliers? Do we, have some, to your point, that we can reduce the amount of effort that we spend on them based on the fact that we have strong performance historically? And so having the form up front was a huge win from a tactical and efficiency side. But the analytics on the back end has really been a huge focus for our organization in order to really drive the strategy around how we interact with our suppliers and doing business with moving forward. So all of that was not possible without building those processes up front and spending some time to ensure that we as an organization had the process in place first. Always something I stress a lot is making sure that we have a good understanding of our process before going into any configuration. But the true benefit that we've had from Reliance, and I think Tom was stressing the same thing, is that ability to configure. The workflows are extremely strong, and the ability to configure is extremely strong. And in my 12 years of being within the tool, I think there's only been one or two times where we just have not been able to hit the mark. It's very, very flexible, and it makes my life a lot easier. So with that, I think I'm going to turn it back over, and I appreciate the time.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Mike. So I see that we're starting to get a question or two that's coming in through the Q&A. But before we do that, we just had a question or two that we wanted to ask of you in front of our attendees, just to give them some insights. So the first question is, how do you get management buy-in in implementing something like this?
Would you like me to take that one?
Please.
Tom? Yeah, I think the benefits just are so much outweigh the cost in all reality. When it came down to being able to conduct the SCAR process and being able to go back and forth with our suppliers, everything happening in email, and I think especially we actually implemented this process during COVID. And so when we weren't in office and you didn't have the direct interaction with people, there could be people that get sick and you just didn't know. And so these things would slip through the cracks. And so management really noticed the fact that by not having a process in place that we could actually monitor and control, we were spending more time and money by it being absent. And so the ROI was huge within the monitoring space. And that really is what we got to manage it to buy off on.
Did you actually have to document the business case for that and present it to management?
We did, absolutely. We do internally what we call our opportunity cost sheet, if you will, or OCS. And so we go through an analysis of how much time we're really spending on this in email, and what do we perceive as being our realized gain by bringing it digital. And we start to quantify that, and we basically make a story to help justify that.
Excellent. So that's overcoming the management side of things, which is getting permission to go ahead and do something.
Yeah.
When it came to implementation, I'm sure that there was some change involved with your teammates and other members of Illumina that had to kind of embrace the new system. How did you manage that process?
Yeah, it's death by information. We just inform. One of the things that I think that people at Illumina have is a strong propensity for change. One of our values is to move fast and embrace change. And so in essence, at Illumina, that is one of the things that'll make you break you here. So it's one of those things where I think that people really have a want to get into something digital so that they are able to do the latest and greatest. It's kind of a company culture type of thing. And so through communicating heavily with our end user base and providing them with strong organizational change management was really key to us getting that buy-in and building that goodwill.
Excellent. And I guess it's kind of a positive snowball effect. Once people see the benefits and the whatnot, they want to do more, right?
Exactly. And that's kind of where I'm at right now is we want to do a lot more. One example, supplier SCAR extensions. If the supplier needs more time, we want to allow them the ability to extend that rather than us having to go through that whole process. So huge benefits that we can gain from that.
Yeah, that makes me think of something, Mike, that between that and what you said before about the high degree of configurability, this is a major differentiator that we've seen with ETQ Reliance as compared to some other tools that might be similar, is that the flexibility makes the system future-proof. Right? You don't have to customize the system. You're configuring it. You're just modifying a set of settings that folks like yourself that have become experts at our system, whom we certainly embrace and enjoy working with, but you don't have to come to us to do things. You can do it yourself without coming to us.
Yes, we built that myself. I've done a lot of development with Reliance, and it's actually very approachable when it comes to the development side of the house. Everything is done through configuration. There are no customizations that I personally have needed in my time with ETQ. And so as a result, it does make it very scalable. It allows you to continue to maneuver as requirements do change over time and bake that back into the system. Yeah, you're very right about that, Tom.
Excellent. And then the last question that I have, you mentioned the reporting and analytics. So how beneficial is it to be able to do, reporting and farming of the information that comes out of the system?
Oh, yes. That is the buzzword of 2023. I feel like data, right? Analytics is huge. I mean, that's the bread and butter. That's what really gets management, that's what really gets them on bother, right? It's really being able to put it in front of them in a quantifiable way where ultimately they're able to see how we are performing quickly. And so some of the, weekly reviews that we would do where one person's job was aggregating this information, right? Going through, contacting people, how are we doing on this? Let's update the Excel sheet, spending like 20 hours a week doing it. Now it's an automated Tableau report that ultimately just is available. So it's a massive night and day for us.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Well, thanks for that. So those were the questions that we sort of planned for our discussion. So I thought what we might do now is transition over to Q&A. And I see that a couple of questions have come in already. So Mike, these are probably primarily for you just because of your experience in implementing the system in your organization.
Sure.
So the first question came from Richard, and he said, you've incorporated an investigation and process prior to SCAR. Is it similar to or even replicated the inbuilt investigation as part of the CAPA application?
Yes. Great question. So What we did is actually we developed a module that was not out of the box. And so I'm not sure, Tom, if you touched on that as well, but in essence, what Reliance allows you to do is if the 44 flavors don't work for you, we can ultimately create our own module, if you will. And so that's what we did. And as a part of that module, it's that pre-investigation before we get into Kappa. And it's very similar, I think, Richard, to what you're talking about there. And so one of the issues that we had was that, we have a product, it comes from nonconformance. As an example, a material is nonconforming. We then decide to start to investigate. We realize this is a purchase part. This is dealing with supplier. And to dovetail off into the supplier and to be able to actually interact with them to really determine who's at fault, what is going into our root cause investigation to get down to that determination. Because we don't want to just issue SCAR out of the box, or out of the gate, if you will, up front. And so in essence, allowing for supplier investigation prior helps for us to really get down to the right level of investigation for our org.
Gotcha. And it sounds like what you're describing is what we've now released as an out-of-the-box application called Quality Events.
It is. And I think, Tom, I think I saw a little bit about that on the workflow. I will say for this group, quality events, extremely useful. And I know that a lot of what is in the ETQ out of the box is what we've also built as well. That is a great segue into Kappa prior to investing too much within a specific investigation without really knowing the impact.
Well, I would say that we probably took feedback from someone like yourself and others that we've worked with that have shown the need for having something like that we then configured as a predefined application. The idea is that quality events is not necessarily a customer complaint. It's not necessarily a product nonconformance. It's not a SCAR, but it's an issue. Any of those other records could be a source of the issue. An audit finding could be a source of an issue. That's another application that's available on the platform. And any one of those things could feed into this quality events process, which is really a predefined process, as Mike said, for investigating the issue, doing a risk assessment, more importantly, determining if you even need to do a corrective action. Because
exactly.
I'm sure that you would agree, Mike, that all issues are not created equal, and therefore all don't need the same amount of response in the form of a full corrective action. But you do need to address it, and you do need to have objective evidence of the fact that it was evaluated and justification as to why it didn't need a corrective action. So that can all be done within the quality events. The other thing that the quality events can do is serve as an initial source of an observation that somebody might have had. So if you are an employee walking around your facility and you see somebody that's non-complying to a process or not complying to a process, it's not a product non-conformance, it's not a customer complaint. You can just log it as a quality event, which has its own process to evaluate and review and investigate, and then determine if a corrective action is needed. So that's an example of ETQ responding to feedback from our customers and providing that as a valuable option to our newer customers. So we're leveraging constantly. I've been at ETQ for 20 of the past 30 years, and I've seen a tremendous amount of growth with our platform because of the wonderful feedback that we get in the relationship that we have with our own customers. So talk about supplier relationships. We have a great customer relationship. So, and once again, we appreciate your joining us. So there's another question. It looks like it came from Richard again. It looks like he might be using our system already just based on the question. So I'm just going to run this by you. We have, when we implement our system, and because it's configurable, we typically have 3 separate instances available for a customer. So there's a dev instance, which is where you do the initial configuration. Then it might get promoted to a test or QA or validation environment, depending on the industry you work in. And then once that's done, it would then be promoted to production. So what Richard observed is that, and this is maybe more of a comment from Richard for the group than a question for you. What he's seen in the past is using the dev to demonstrate something for upper management. So demonstrate an opportunity for improvement or something that could improve as kind of a use case, proof of concept internally, which then you could choose to use and then promote that, or even take feedback and modify that slightly. So do you do that, Mike?
We do. We actually do that so much that we added a 4th environment. We actually run on a dev test val prod 4-tiered environment. And what that really offers us, Tom, is the ability to do kind of sandboxy stuff within test. Like we really just want to test something out, do something different, kind of to Richard's point, that you can really iterate within Reliance quickly. And that's one of the big advantages of it. And so I can go into a meeting, talk to my end users, come back the next day, provide them with a mock-up of a form as to something that we might need to do, or might want to pursue, rather, if you will. And so, yes, having, the tiered approach. And one other thing to add, maybe a little bit too technical, but I can't say enough good things about that promotion process. As someone that manages multiple tools at Illumina, the ability to migrate changes from lower environments to upper environments is very efficient and built within the tool itself. So that's a huge benefit to someone like myself that's in IT, where previously server management was required before the SaaS model was there. But even in the current SaaS model, you as the end user, like we do, are able to promote those configurations. And very specifically, we can get down to very, very specific things or an entire application itself. So very, very powerful, especially from an IT perspective.
Excellent. And right now we have one more question that's currently in the Q&A. I might even take a swing at this one myself first, Mike, but
sure.
Matthew says that the application appears to be primarily focused on suppliers of products and materials. Could the app and the subsequent integrations be applied to service providers such as contract labs or contract clinical monitoring? And the answer is absolutely yes. So, it's configurable, first of all. Second of all, we have many customers in all those different areas of the business that they're doing. And it doesn't have to be a product-centric relationship. In fact, it doesn't even have to be supplier-centric. Supplier management is just one, what we call a story, sort of a solution that we offer on the platform. We have others around new product introduction. We have others around closed loop quality management, which we just touched on briefly with quality events and the different sources that could lead into a full corrective action, which result in action items that are managed using workflow with full traceability to the outputs of those action items. We have another story around health and safety. So compliance is compliance. Quality is just one aspect of compliance. So an issue is an issue, right? Whether it's a customer complaint, whether it's a product nonconformance, whether it's an audit finding, or let's bridge over to the safety side of things. It's an accident or incident that occurred within your facility. You still have if ETQ Alliance is implemented globally with a footprint across your organization, and since all the forms look and feel the same, your end users could easily log an incident report where someone got injured as they could a product nonconformance. It doesn't matter because there's still going to be a process to evaluate it, risk assess it, and then maybe do a corrective action, which could then result in modification of documents. Everyone's using the same document management system, whether you're in environmental health, safety, or quality. It doesn't matter because you need procedures that are approved. You need to have an audit program. You need to have corrective actions. You need to have training. You need to have change management. I could go on, and I'm trying not to talk as fast as I do because I get a little excited about some of this stuff. But it's really one compliance management system that our solution provides to you. So that's the one thing. And if you don't mind, Mike, I'm just going to segue into another question that comes from David about can the system be deployed across multiple sites? That is really our sweet spot because our system has this thing called contextual awareness, where you define your organizational structure, which could extend to external users like suppliers, which is what gives us the ability to interact with those suppliers, because contextual awareness can dynamically filter what people can see and do based on their role and location within the organization or outside, like contractors, suppliers, contract laboratories, or anybody else that you're talking about. So literally, the system is the footprint, which gives you global and extended to external users capabilities. And then the functionality allows you to manage your business processes within that context. If you want dynamic filtering, so people can only see the things that pertain to them, taking it to the next level. And Mike, I'm sure you're very aware of the capability of baking business rules into the processes. Someone creates a record, chooses a value, and then routes it to the next step. The configuration might know who it gets assigned to by group or role, how much time they have to work on it, which step does it go to, which other processes that may have to be launched automatically from that. What ETQ Reliance can do is automate your business processes across your entire enterprise, regardless if it's a one facility or many facility organization.
Yeah, to add to that, if it helps, Tom, Illumina is very much a global organization. We operate in Europe, Asia, Americas, here in California. And so amongst our different manufacturing sites that we do have, they all leverage the same instance of Reliance. And so one of the big benefits of that, and kind of how you would describe it, Tom, is the ability to as well configure locally. where if we do have local requirements, we can base on users' location in order for certain aspects of the system to happen versus not based on another location.
Absolutely. And there's one other question that just came up actually related to that. It was not only multiple sites, but also multiple ERP systems. In a real life situation, depending on the structure of your organization, some organizations are formed by acquisition. You're going to have different systems in place. So we have literally some customers that have dozens of ERP systems that are integrating into our one system. And that's why I mentioned that our suppliers, materials, and chemicals application is often the only place where there could be a single source of truth for all suppliers. We have some customers that have the same supplier in different places. They have different supplier numbers. They have different things. But the one thing that they do have in common is the address. So we've had literally customers that have integrated from multiple ERP systems into one global list of supplier profiles, and they might have different fields to track the individual numbers for those suppliers from the individual locations in the different ERPs. So you can still manage and work with that one supplier. There's visibility as to your entire organization's relationship with that supplier, not just the individual facility anymore, but there's visibility into the entire organization's relationship. And therefore, you can manage the quality with that supplier. You can have a better relationship to constantly improve the quality of the products and services that they provide. And as I mentioned very early on, everyone benefits from that. Everyone benefits because the supplier is going to provide you with more product because you're going to order more from them. You're going to be happy. They're going to be happy. And then it's just going to grow from there. So the goal is to ultimately minimize the cost of poor quality for your own customers. Okay. So I don't see any more questions. Gina, I think, have we done this thing justice today?
Well, I think so, but let's give everybody an opportunity. If you have one more burning question, please click on that Q&A icon, submit your question. We do have a few moments, and it looks like you have lots more resources that people can tap into to find out more about ETQ and how it's being applied and can be applied. So let me encourage you everybody to take a look at that after the webinar. Well, doesn't look like we have any more questions, so that's a good sign. It means you've answered what was on people's minds. Do you have any closing comments, Tom?
I would just like to thank everyone for their time today. And what's interesting, Gina, is you said it would be about 45 minutes, and that's almost exactly where we are. So
nice.
This has been excellent. And Mike, thank you so much for doing this with us today.
Absolutely. No, it's a pleasure, Tom.
Well, thank you both very much. And on behalf of FDA News and ETQ, I would like to thank our participants for joining us today. Please be sure to fill out the very brief survey that will pop up at the conclusion of this webinar. Your feedback is very important to us. This now concludes today's event. I hope you join us again in the future.